Hello, this is Max Drake. I want to talk about triggering Python scripts on a remote server. So the normal ones which I've been doing up until now is that I've just come through, I've gone onto the remote server, and I've got a task scheduler that sets things up to run at a specific time. So if we actually just look at the task itself and we see what it's actually doing, all it's actually doing is it's starting Python script up, Python exe, and then it's running a Python program exe file, and then it's running the script file, and that's actually located in that particular subdirectory. And the triggers that are actually occurring, of this one's actually happening at daily at 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. So that does that at that point in time. It makes some API calls, it brings some data back, it puts them into a data frame, it modifies them, it then puts it up onto, creates a matplotlib, and then it saves that matplotlib, the plot, as a PDF file. And then at 6 o'clock there's another trigger, and that actually just takes that plot and emails it to me, so that I actually have information of that. But that information might change. So if you're actually making decisions on things, like if you think of shares, if you're getting the shares first thing in the morning or an hour into the trading, and you're making some decisions based on that, if that's what's actually happening at that point in time. But if you look at later on in the trading period, it might be particularly volatile. And an example of that is that if we just look at what actually happens in here at the 6 o'clock, we've got this email. Here's the PDF that I've actually got through there, and the blue, which is dotted blue, is very almost on the bottom line right the way through here. So this comes until 5 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock, at 6 o'clock I'm actually making a decision. It says, oh well, look, it's going to go up to about 500 or something like that. That's what it's predicted to do. So what decision do I want to make? Can I actually shift some of the things I'm doing to a later time? So if that's what's actually happening, let's actually see what does happen. And when we look through, suddenly at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, where it's only costing us $16.40 for megawatt hour, suddenly it leaps up to about $2,600 per megawatt hour, only for a very short period of time. But if you actually chose it in the wrong time, you can see that there's a lot of volatility here. So you can sort of think, well, there seems to be a lot of volatility at around this time, which is the high peak time at 7 when everybody gets up. So maybe hold off until later. So maybe we can predict that there might be that volatility at 5 o'clock, because it seems to be jumping around far more than what we actually predicted that it just tracked with the green line through here. So getting the information only at one time of the day may not be the most appropriate, especially if it's a fixed period in a thing. So being able to actually reactivate that or get information at a later period means that actually having it on a set task schedule isn't necessarily the ideal thing to do. So because I can actually click in and use this remote desktop connection, I can jump into my server. Now my PC is here with me in Wellington, and my remote server is actually running in Germany. So I can go onto the remote server and with the connection from my PC, and now run the script from there and actually activate those programs individually. But I want to be able to do it remotely from mine at any particular period of time. So initially I looked at doing things like using PowerShell or the Command Prompt, and having something like a bat file on my PC and having a bat file on the server, and the bat file that you activated on the PC, local PC, would open up a connection and trigger that other bat file to actually run those scripts and things. Now I tried that method, and I was struggling for a long time, couldn't actually find anything simple or any obvious way to do that. So the next one I thought, well, hey, I've got all of these, I've got this site which I kind of just do kind of proof of concept things that I'll be playing with, and maps and conditions and stuff. This is one that I actually have that just runs a bit of Java. So this is now, and this is to do with 1, 2, 3 buildings down here, and it's got triangles which represent roofs, squares which represent walls, windows and doors. So depending on those, we can see the condition changes. So there's just a bit of JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript that just runs, and it's changing the shapes and it's changing the stuff. So you suddenly think, oh, well, I've got that one. I've got another one here that has a whole load of pins on a map. Now, if I touch one of the pins, it's suddenly got a whole lot of information about fabric conditions on a lot more. So this is going reading database, and I don't know if it's an Ajax or which would be or a PHP call, but it's just going to a database, grabbing some information through. So I thought, oh, well, that's the sort of a method that I want to do. So what I want is a little button. I just want to hit a button, and then it goes off and does something. So I said, hey, Bing baby, go and get me a button. So the first time it did, or a couple of ones that it did, it said, okay then, it's going to write some script. So it's going to write some JavaScript into here, and I'm okay with a little bit of JavaScript. I don't particularly like it. I could never quite figure some of the things out, but I have got it working in the past. And it says it requires this child process, and it spawns, and this one here. So I just presumed that this was just straight vanilla JavaScript. That means it runs on its own. But in fact, this one, when I pressed the button, nothing happened at all. But what it needed a Node.js server running in the background on my VPS server, and it didn't have that. So this just didn't do anything at all. So I suddenly thought, well, this is about my Python scripts that I'm running, so I actually want a Pythonic solution. So when I looked at the Pythonic sort of solution through there, I suddenly thought, well, what are the options? And they said, well, you've got to have this sort of servery type thing to actually do something. So you can either go with Flask, or you can actually go with Django. And you're suddenly thinking, well, Django's the big beastie. I'll go for Flask, the little beastie. But I'm a bit wary about running, activating and running servers on my main server, because maintaining, so anytime you might have to shut down your server and restart it again, you've got to remember to restart all of these other little sub-servers on there doing their own little thing. So I was a bit wary about doing that, but I thought, well, hey, if this is a solution that I need to do, then this is a solution I need to do. So what I ended up doing was I ended up just making another subfolder on this particular website, and I thought, well, okay, then I'll run a Flask app on there. So when I did that, and I'm just going to refresh this through here, and so this is just making this little web page with a little button on here. So when I click this button, it should go off and do something, but it's actually coming through with actually saying cause missing, allow origin. Now if I go, sorry, actually I better check that. If we go onto the remote server, I'll tell you, oh, that's why it's not working. So if we're on the remote server and we're not in that one, we need to go to this one through here. And we need to start our Flask app. So I'm going to go and run our Flask app. And so that runs a local server on HTTP. So if we run this one here and just double click on it, and if we come up onto our browser, so this is opening the browser inside the server, I've got the little run script through here. So if I just go onto the network in here and run that script, it's going to run the script. It's going to say get, and it's going and doing a fetch, which is the Java thing, and it sends it through here. So if we just pop out of there at this point in time, we'll see that email will come through shortly. And there's the email saying that it's actually run that script fine. So you suddenly think, well, okay, then we've now got the Flask server, Flask app server running on the other one. So we can now run on this website. So when I run this website here, so I'm just going to refresh that one through there. And if I go run the script, it actually says cause missing, allow origin, which it shouldn't really be doing. But the one thing to note through here is it actually said blocked. One of the things which it actually says, another one that it comes up through, so let's just close that down there, is instead of cause missing, it actually says mixed block. And what that is, it's trying to send through an HTTPS, says go and get this, so when it runs this particular script, it's trying to run it on a HTTP. So one's got secure and the other one isn't secure. And so what it does is it just says, no, we're not going to let you through. We don't let you do that mixed one from an HTTPS to an HTTP. So I said, well, what can I do, Mr. Bing? And the Mr. Bing says, well, what you've got to do is you've got to go and make your app through here, so your Flask app, you've got to do that. Now, you see they actually said no, it doesn't accept cross origin requests. So this does. This I've actually added an extra library called Flask cores, import cores, to allow cross origin requests, and it's still blocking it. So it doesn't like it at all. So I'm suddenly saying, well, that's not very good. So I've got HTTPS coming in from the outside, which is just from the web page, but because it's trying to run a HTTP server through here, it says, no, we don't want you to do that. So I was suddenly saying, no, well, what can I do? And they said, well, you need to get a certificate so that when you're running your Flask app, that it's got an HTTPS, then they'll talk to each other. So you're suddenly thinking, oh, is that what I've got to do? Well, I actually looked up and I came across this thing by guy in Python, which is Python Flask application on ISS deployed. So it's got that, and it's also got a GitHub with a repository with some code in there, so that you can, so that it's tutorial, you can set it all up through there. The only difference with his to mine is that I've also got the Flask course library added to it as well. So when you do that, what that does is it goes on and creates in your Internet Information Services Manager, it creates another website that's basically running as a server through there. Now I set it up a couple of times. I ran 2 different tutorials, and it creates an HTTP. So when I run this one here, and I'm going to click on the HTTP one through here, this is still on the server. So this is the browser on the server, and if I run this script through there, so you can see it's got the slash through, so it isn't HTTPS, runs the script, and if we just come outside of here, we'll see it pop up very shortly, and it would have run it if it isn't running it now. There's a bit of processing to do on all of the things, but it should come through and run that script again. So we allow it to run it from the server side. But if I come through and try and run it, so sorry, that's the web one, let's have the other one. So this is the other one. Let's just go and check that one to make sure. This is this one here onto 82 HTTP. So this is the HTTP2 ones running through here. When I try running this one through here, it's just saying it's a problem. We don't like a problem, but basically it'll block it. It'll just say timeout, because it's saying we're not going to take an HTTP request from remote. We'll take an HTTPS, but we're not going to, here we are, so we got end timeout, so it just times out all the time, so it's never going to work. So you've got to somehow make the Flask app HTTPS. So when we come back into here, what I ended up doing was I ended up going into here, well, I ended up coming into bindings for that one. So we've set up inside his video, you'll see that he set up it's almost like a web server for that particular website through there, and then we're going to add an HTTPS site. And now I'm actually just going to make it 5 thing. I'm going to go 4335 just for the hell of it, and then I'm going to just find a certificate from another site. I need something with there's a 2023 one, and go OK. So I've got another one through here. So I've now got 2 of the ones running through here. So this is running on port 4435. This one's running on, I just want a silly number port, so it's not interfering with my normal ones, which would be 80, and I think 443 is the normal one for that. So if I just go and close on that one now, if I just go and we're going to open this one up inside, I'll close that down again last. Inside of Firefox, inside the browser. But we're not going to run it from here. I just really want that. Oh, I can do it another way. It's taking too long. I can come into here and I can get that one there, and instead of 443 there I can type 4435. So I'm going to run this one, enter through there, and I should get it blocked, and it's going to get naffy with me for the simple reason that certificate does not match the domain name. And because there isn't that match between the domain name and the certificate, it will say no. Oh no, that should be timing out. That should actually be running. If we just come back to that one there, blast, and refresh. So that one's gone sulky on me for some reason. This one should be wonderful, and it's coming through. It's got the document. Sorry, I've got that for run script. And if we run it for empty, we've got the button for running script, so it's uploaded that particular site. The other one actually triggered by the look of it, and then it's come through here. So when I press this button now, it will come through and it will do that fetch request. So you can have that mixed block, but for an HTTPS trying to do a Flask app which is HTTP, it doesn't like that. And here we've seen that that one's just triggered at 344. So if we just go in and look at our ones now, we should have 344. So that one's come through. Ta-ra. And if we look at the information on there, it should be, oh sorry, it should have happened. It should be the latest information. Page width. So we're somewhere running down here at the moment. So that works. So at this point in time, I've got a proof of concept, which I've actually just used my IP address at this point in time. Now, the reason I've used my IP address is because I tried hooking it directly underneath an existing domain that I've got, but because I'm running, I've got to basically run the Flask app as the domain or as a subdomain, so I've got to set that up like this. But this allows me to now trigger this from anywhere. Now this is something that I quite like. When I was trying to do the thing from using PowerShell or Command, that was only going to let me do it on Windows, whereas this one, because it's actually just a web browser, I can put that, I can actually access that from my mobile phone, which is the Android. So this is great. I can actually access it across everything. Now to take this a couple of steps further, now that I've got that button to run, I've got a few apps that I'm suddenly thinking, well, I've automated them to actually just happen daily at specific times. But in fact, I don't want them. Like the Ephemeris, I don't tend to use it every day. So generating one each day is just sort of filling up my email inbox and stuff. I've got my tides and stuff like that, and generally I just look on my weather website when I'm actually out, I find my internet's a bit slow, so actually just having something that will trigger and then I'll just download a file is an easier way to go. Now I suppose there might be a thing, instead of actually just sending me an email, I could actually just get I suppose some other way of a response, and it could go and save it onto something like a Google Drive or something like that. But I quite like the system of actually just having that email, and then I can actually just delete that email with the image or whatever else I've got in it at all. But I can do things like my weather. So I can actually have a button for the weather, I can actually have a button for my electricity, I can have a button for my sunrise, sunsets and all of that sort of thing as well. So suddenly I can actually just have one web page that has a whole lot of buttons that are just different triggers, so I can trigger whatever I want when I want. So I'm very, very pleased now that I've got that level of versatility. It's still proof of concept at this point in time, but of all of the videos that I've seen so far, they all sort of just show you this simplistic way that works, but it's not sort of saying, if you do it this way, it breaks. 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 So his process of doing it, I'm not, of setting it up for an IIS is there, and he's got some files for you to do there. Mine is really just a cautionary tale of, I know an awful lot of ways how it doesn't work. Now, I did sort of play with the idea of, instead of just doing a Python one, I'd actually try and do it. And so I downloaded Node.js, but I was suddenly thinking, well, in fact, no, I might remove that from my computer again, from my server again, because I think I'm happy with the situation I've got. The other nice thing is, by actually having it on the IIS through here, on the IIS through here, it automatically starts the Flask app, so as a website. So when I reboot my computer up, it reboots the Auto Flask app, so I don't have to restart it here or anything like that. It's just running straight away. And this is something that I'd use all the time. So just having this sitting in the background on the server so that I can actually call certain things out, it's really good. That kind of remote, well, I suppose it is remote control, but it's remote automation. But I was always a bit felt restrained by being forced to actually have the task manager or task scheduler only at a specific time, and I didn't want to end up having it at every hour on the hour and actually completely filling up my inbox, because I suddenly thought, I don't need that. This allows me now to actually just get information when I want that information. So I've got stuff that I'm actually storing and gathering each day, and it's actually just creating a historical database, and that's fine. That just needs an automatic trigger time, and once a day, and it just happens automatically, and that's lovely. But there's an awful lot of the things that I'm building at the moment that are reasonably bespoke, that I don't necessarily want to have trigger each day, and if I want them to trigger, I might want them to trigger at different times of the day. And a lot of that sort of like forward information, or things happening to the forward, like I want to know the weather, so I want to know the weather from now forward. And then once I've got it, I can sort of delete it. But I might want the weather, and and I can actually have a combined one that gets the weather, the moon phases, the this, the that, the other, and the tides, and some things. So I can actually have a smaller window shot, so I don't have to generate as much data, because of the fact that I might only need that information for a certain duration. So I can start playing with the amount of information that I'm trying to pull across each time. The further steps from this as well that I think is quite interesting. At this point in time, I've got a button. I'm sort of trying to make these apps reasonably bespoke, and or the scripts bespoke to my particular interests and needs. So it's valid for what I was doing. But if you go back and look at the ephemeris one, when we were doing the ephemeris library, all you needed was a latitude and longitude of wherever you were on the world, and then all you would need is your own personal email address, and it would then develop an ephemeris chart for that location. So therefore it would be sending an email from this particular server, but it would be sending the email to whoever that person is. So you could then create an app that would allow people to actually make their own bespoke tools in a way. They just add their bits of detail on, and it just sends them the email. And that could be automated, is they can actually say, I want it daily, or they've just got the button, and if it remembers their thing. So you could end up with a page with this sort of thing that other people could utilize it for their own personal use. So you can have this one here, not this particular one, this one here, which would be for my particular one, and you can have a second page that anybody could actually put their information in, and then they could store it, so that any time they opened up that page, it remembered their latitude and longitude, they'd press the button and it would send the email, and it would keep their email, and it would actually just send the data to them. So there's a kind of further refinement of how this actually expands the scope, that instead of just being specifically for you can actually modify it so that it makes it more general for other people and makes it a lot more flexible for them as well. So it's actually taken me a few days. It's most probably taken me the whole of the week to actually get this working, of trying different ways to do things. So at the moment I'm still not quite there, but as a proof of concept I can now run this quite nicely. You can run this one because this app is actually running. It's doing an extra step that it doesn't necessarily need to have. That I just wanted to point out here. For this Flask app, what this is doing, where it's got this app root and it's just got the / through there, it says, well, you create this template folder, apparently in Flask, and then it actually has this index HTML that actually just has this one button at the moment. Now I can end up with 5 buttons, and I can colour the buttons, I can give it bigger backgrounds, I can put paddings around, do lots of marvellous things to make it more prettified on the actual HTML page. So this can be developed further, and you can end up with 2 or 3 different things that it's triggering. This one here, instead of actually going to the path, the / path that takes you to the index where you actually have to click on that button there, you could just go and type /run script. And if you just run, so instead of actually having the button, I can actually go into here and go v run script, and now if I run that, I don't have to press the button. Anytime I just open that page up, it'll just run that directly. And that would work. Well, it could work if you could have a whole load of different pages, but it would work if you've only got the one. But if you're going to have several different triggers for different routes, so from the point of the Flask app, oops, coming back again, so there, that one's called and it's triggered. If in here, that's one route, which is the app route for running this one, you may want several other ones for different buttons as well. So this allows this whole thing to get expanded. So from the point of view of where I've been avoiding these Flask apps in the past, I can now see a real use for them. And to a certain extent, I was playing with Python, and I come across the Flask ones, I come across the Dash apps, and I come across Streamlit one, which was for shares, which I've been setting up one for that and playing, doing a tutorial on. And I suddenly thought they're fun, they're interesting, but they didn't actually have a valid use for me that was useful. But this is useful. I think this is something that I would find that just would stop my inbox overpopulating with a lot of things that I don't really want. Because at the moment, if we actually just go and look at my inbox, because of some of the processes that I'm doing, I'm ending up with something like 18 emails a day at this point in time. So that's an awful lot of emails that I'm doing. And now a lot of those are actually just uploading up, but I've also got other ones where I'm actually just confirming that they've gone through, because I'm not only emailing them to myself, I'm emailing them to the client as well, so that they have a backup copy of some data that has been generated. So if anything happens, they have some information that is available. So I just need to confirm that they've received that email, and then I can actually, so I'm getting about 6 emails that in fact I delete every day. It's just really a confirmation for me that the client's also got that information. If I've got it, they've got it. And then I can delete those ones. And the other ones to actually confirm that they've been uploaded onto the database, those are the ones which are important to me, because they've then been processed and they're successful at doing that. So my inboxes of one particular site is full up with an awful lot of these things that it's getting a little bit too much. So being able to only trigger certain ones when I need them will actually reduce a lot of this over it, although it's not really an either. You know, you can actually just put a filter that does a deletion or something like that as a part of a process. But I can see it's sort of like you don't know you need it until you got it working. And now that I've got it partially working, I'm quite pleased with what's done, and I've sort of felt as if I've made so many mistakes along the way, and I finally got something that is reasonably robust and it works, but I need to improve on it. I need to give it a domain name, and then I need to set up a couple of nice pages that I can actually just access on my mobile phone and just trigger when I need to. So, and some of those things I can actually reduce the amount of data that I'm pulling down each time, because I only need to maybe look at an hour or 2 hours interval rather than a whole 24-hour interval on some of these things, because in which case, and then after I've actually got that information, I can actually delete it as well. So just the whole processing method needs to be reviewed. So I hope you found that of interest. It's a bit haphazard, and I've had a bit of a struggle trying to get my head around this. And as I said, it's just I seem to have done everything wrong, and somebody would come off and they'll most probably say, that stupid idiot, they should have done that. But all of the tutorials that I saw, they just showed me this simplistic way of how it's all supposed to perfectly work, when in fact it never did. Mine just blew up in my face. So I just wanted to share those sort of frustrations along the way, but there is a way forward. So I will give a link to this tutorial that I used to actually do it, and to some of the scripts that I've got. Well, the scripts that I've got working, although I don't know how useful they'll be to you. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that useful. Please give a thumbs up. Thank you.